So hello and welcome to today's video. So error screens have always been a massive part of technology. After all, they're there to tell you that something is wrong. And they can be quite useful in explaining what the problem is. Sometimes it's something very basic like your disk is dirty or damaged, just go and wash it and see if it works again. Like something crashes and it pops up an error saying like ER-436-SDJX or whatever. I just completely made that up. But yeah, it can help diagnose the issue for those with more technical know-how. But the thing with this is, quite a lot of people out there tend to find error screens unsettling for whatever reason. And there's God knows how many variations of error screens out there. And when I was a young child, I always found error screens on consoles to be quite creepy. Not scary per se, but there was just something about them that always unsettled me whenever they'd pop up on my PlayStation 1. I wasn't scared of errors in general, like when I went on the family computer, we had Windows XP like everybody else, but when an error would pop up on that, it didn't intimidate me at all. Maybe a little bit startling with the Windows XP error sound, but nothing that would always make me feel uncomfortable. And of course, as time has gone on, they don't unnerve me anymore, but it's finding out that a load of other people who were young kids in the 2000s or the 90s also had that slight fear of error screens. Namely, the one we're talking about first is going to be the black screen with white text. Now personally, I've never been scared by these, but I can kind of see what people mean when they say they're quite unsettling. And I feel what makes this kind of unsettling is the sudden shift in tone. Like you've gone from say enjoying a adventure with Mario to your TV telling you need to turn your console off right away, something bad has happened, and it won't tell you what's exactly going on. It can be strangely ominous and invokes a bit of a sense of urgency too. So couple this with a bit of a late night gaming session when you're a young child and say it's 11 PM, it's all dark and silent and you're by yourself in your bedroom with the lights off, I can kind of see why this would be quite scary. Nowadays, you don't really kind of get these errors anymore. At least I speak for PlayStation. I don't know about Xbox because I haven't played that in years. But at least on PlayStation 4 and 5, if these things occur, usually just thrown to an error screen with an animated background, probably hearing the PlayStation dashboard music playing. So it kind of negates any scariness when you have this calm ambient music playing with a bright blue background, and it's not telling you to turn your console off right away. But of course, this isn't the only kind of gaming crash out there. Sometimes you could just be playing your favourite game and all of a sudden your game just locks up. Basically turns your game into a screenshot and there's nothing you can really do except to force restart the console. Now the thing with these kind of errors is they can be quite creepy in their own way. I think they're only common on dying hard drives nowadays, but I kind of remember that back in the PS2 Xbox era, if your disc was damaged that badly, you might have run into the risk of deteriorating your game in real time, which apparently is a real phobia called versiphobia, which is a fear of visual glitches, crashes, or basically whenever technology just goes wrong. Now one memory I have of this specifically is when I was a young lad. I remember playing Tony Hawk's American Wasteland on the original Xbox. If you played American Wasteland and you played the story mode on it, you might remember that to traverse levels you had to go through these kind of tunnels or pipes or whatever, basically masking the loading zones. And one time I remember I was going back to Santa Monica from the oil rig, and once I shot out the pipe, for whatever reason the game just suddenly screwed up. It loaded nothing except the skybox. I'm not talking about standing on the ledge of a Spyro the Dragon level, but nothing loaded except the skybox. Like, no models, there were no textures, I can't remember if collision loaded or not, but I do remember my character was essentially in this weird greyish void of nothingness. And on top of that, the song that was playing started looping the last second or so. I can't remember if there's any singing or if it was the instruments, but what I do remember was it scared the shit out of me. Looking back, it's clear the game was about to crash, but I didn't care. Like, I turned my Xbox off so quick. It shot a completely weird fear into me. Like, watching the game break down and deteriorate in real time as a child is one hell of an experience. Maybe I'm being slightly overdramatic, but I'd say that when you encounter these kinds of crashes, you're essentially watching the world ceasing to exist in a way. Like in my case, I was going from this kind of laid back skateboarding adventure to literal hell and turning into a void of nothingness. I'm not really sure how kind of common these crashes are because I've only encountered an error like this at least once. Well, unintentionally anyway. I'm not including the amount of times I've messed around with mods on PC and caused it myself. But if you do want to see these kind of slowly deteriorating game crashes, there is that trend going around on YouTube at least, where people install PC games onto their USB, usually Valve ones, and then pull the USB out while playing. And the stuff I've seen, it is quite close to what I've described, just in terms of how the game kind of slowly dies on you as you're playing it. While not as bad actually, I do remember another kind of instance where this happened, was when my old hard drive was on its way out, and I remember I was playing a Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, and my entire screen just glitched out and was doing this. Now, unfortunately I don't have a video, I only have just a picture, and at the time I did think it was my GPU failing. After all, usually this is a sign of failing hardware, but as it turns out the hard drive was beginning to fail on me, so this kind of started affecting a lot of other games I played. I remember, I think it was when I played Saints Row 2 as well, the map just wouldn't load. And on the topic of Saints Row 2 actually, Saints Row YouTuber Saints Godzilla 21 has a showcase of his broken Saints Row copy where it's busted to the point it's a shock the game even loaded. It's complete with levels not loading, models missing, frequent crashes, pedestrians not even loading. It's something straight out of a creepypasta, but real. But I guess this varies on the game and just how badly corrupted or damaged the game is, because my memories of the Tony Hawk's American Wasteland one were it just breaking right before my very eyes, while that Half-Life 2 one seems to cling on to dear life and throws all sorts of godly sounds at you to avoid dying. Speaking of ungodly sounds, let's talk about the Wii for a quick second, which is completely notorious for its crashing sound. Who the hell at Nintendo thought it was a wise idea to have the Wii blast out whatever the damn hell this is? Now this one is a damn jump scare. Anyone who's ever encountered this knows just how loud and sudden it is. May God be with you if your Wii decides to kill itself one day. But I still have to ask, like, why? I don't ever remember these kind of errors appearing on the PS2 or 360 or whatever, but I remember plenty of times when that sound just caught me right off guard on the Wii. But of course these kind of loud sound errors I guess aren't just limited to the Wii. As a PC player, I've encountered something like this multiple times when I needed to replace the thermal paste on my PC. Like I'll be playing a game, then all of a sudden I get jump scared by the blue screen of death and the last nanosecond of audio just stuck on a loop. I'll be honest, I do not know how the audio works in the event of a crash, but what I do know is it tends to be very unpleasant. It was fine when the PC was on mute, but for me, if I was really getting into a match of Battlefield only to get jump scared like that, not as bad as Reagan McNeil or the KFC Zombie, but I'd say it's up there when you're really not expecting it. And now let's talk about one of the most infamous error screens of all time, the PlayStation 2 red screen of death. A very traumatic experience for anybody who owned a PlayStation 2. First of all, I think what makes this jarring is how it just suddenly throws the black and red screen in your face, both colours that are often associated with trouble and danger. And red is always used as a rather serious colour anyway, we see it in a lot of warnings as is. And the PS2's main colour scheme is black and blue. The console itself is black, the logo is blue, the boot screen is in black and blue, same for the configuration screen, so throwing you to this red screen out of nowhere subliminally tells you that something is off. And absolutely without a shadow of a doubt, one of the biggest reasons this scared so many kids in the 2000s is because of the ambience. Unlike most other error screens which are more often than not mute, this one doesn't, it keeps playing some audio. Unfortunately, the audio that plays during the red screen of death is much more aggressive than it is in, say, during the config screen or the boot up. It's weird because on the config screen you can hear what sounds like the waves of the ocean, which can be quite calming, yet on the red screen of death it keeps playing the same sounds. But if you listen carefully, there's also some strange subtracks. Like if you listen carefully, it does sound like there's some drums going on, and some of the audio does sound like it's in a lower pitch, which makes it sound much more serious. And like I mentioned earlier, I think it's the juxtaposition of hearing those calm ocean waves with a blue kind of background suddenly going to a red one. It just doesn't really fit. And I feel like every PS2 owner knew something was up if it took longer than 5 seconds to get past this screen. Then you knew your disc was either cooked, or you'd be staring into the voids of hell very shortly. And so I saved the cliche for last, but let's talk a bit about anti-piracy errors. And no, I am not talking about those anti-piracy trends where somebody takes, say, image render of Mario from Mario Kart 8, makes it look like something like a creepypasta, and slaps it into Mario Kart 64 where Mario threatens to gouge your eyes out and cut your head off and stick it on a pike outside Nintendo HQ for downloading the ROM. But instead, regular anti-piracy screens. Not methods, just screens. In all honesty, anti-piracy errors are probably the perfect example of how sometimes less really is more. The game itself works fine, but somehow the anti-piracy screen gets triggered so you're not playing the game, you're essentially being warned. As a young child, encountering an anti-piracy screen is extremely effective because you're expecting to enjoy your game, and then all of a sudden without warning it cuts to a screen with no audio and a very serious message telling you that you've committed a very serious crime. Which is quite similar to the error occurred messages, but I feel this one is quite different in its own way. Because to a young child, this message telling you you've committed a serious crime is near enough telling them that you're going to prison, and that is usually enough to put the fear of God into a young child. Of course, We know there is no real way that your PS1 or NES is going to be contacting the police, but it doesn't matter. To an irrational young mind, the police are coming for you. There's definitely another major shift in tone when it cuts to one of these. Instead of this urgent, ominous tone, it's kind of like a stern talking to. When I was 9, I remember getting scared by an anti-piracy screen. It wasn't a gaming anti-piracy one, but I'm including it here because, well, let me just explain. But I tried pirating some software for the very first time. I did it wrong, as you'd expect, and I distinctly remember triggering the anti-piracy screen, which was an error telling you that your IP has been reported to the police. And it quickly opened up a web page saying so. It worked on me because I remember deleting that software so quick, and then I ran out the house saying I was going to meet up with a friend down the street, because I thought the police were coming to get me. Of course, it was just scareware, but, you know, it did its job. It was terrifying. And I think that's what makes anti-piracy screens a bit more effective than anti-piracy methods, because the methods usually let you play the game for a bit before something makes it unplayable. It could be something that locks a level off, or, you know, just something that makes the game incredibly frustrating to the point you just don't want to play it. While anti-piracy screens are just a flat-out roadblock, the tone is much more serious, and they are making sure you are not playing this game. Apparently, actually, there is an anti-piracy screen on the PS1, but if you tried modding your PS1 and playing a mod chip game, something like this would pop up. Not going to imagine that might have scared a few people, you know, expecting to boot up the Crash Bandicoot only to see that. But yeah, that's it for today's video about why I think error screens can be quite unnerving at times. Hope you enjoyed this video, hope to see you at the next one. Thanks for watching and have a great day.